Hello, fellow classmates, and welcome to Chapter 5 facilitation video, where the chapter that we're going to be focusing on today is We Claim Our Childhood Traumas. We're going to be starting off with reflecting on our experiences. And this chapter automatically brought me to the question, why do we even need to reflect upon our decisions or actions that we take? And I like this quote on page 89 that I saw. It says, "We learn from reflecting and learning to fix bad habits." So an example that we can see is Jacobson when she basically kind of lashed out a bit, was a bit harsh on her child for playing outside without her being there because she wasn't able to be there at the time, and the child was playing alone. Well, to her, she felt as if the child was alone, even though the neighbors were watching out for him. But Jacobson was afraid to let people know that she was a single mother. But once she reflected on why she lashed out on her son, she learned that it was because she was basically ashamed and afraid of what other people were going to say about her being a single mother. So I feel like that's a really good example on reflecting on what just happened, trying to fix, like not just letting the mistake happen and brushing it away, like, oh, I yelled at my son. It happens. It happens all the time. Mothers always yell at their children, right? But no, instead of doing that, you should ask yourself why. I feel like that's like the key word is, why do we do what we do? This right here is just a quote that I really like, which says, "We cannot escape the patterns we experience, but we can respond with intelligence awareness rather than knee jerk reactions." So basically, what this quote is overall saying, like I said, instead of just brushing off the situation that just happens, we have two choices. We can rather not want to reflect on it and just pretend like it didn't happen, or we can actually become aware and like make an intelligent decision out of what just happened. And we learn from our experiences, right? Each and every time we have new experiences or we have the same experience, we still learn something new from that experience. So reflecting on our childhood traumas, this honestly has a bigger impact than what most of you might think of. So we can even have traumas about something that we forgot about. In my case, I noticed that it's actually very important to reflect upon the impact that you had as a child or the trauma that you had as a child, because now when you're an adult, you can figure out what triggers you by reflecting on your past. And if you know what triggers you, maybe you can come up with different techniques in order to make lessen that trigger or to aid with that trigger that you might have. So on a personal note, when I immigrated to Canada, I was only about like 5 or 6, so I didn't know any English, but I learned as the years went by. But I noticed that when I was in school, sometimes I used to get bullied, especially when they did like everyone had to read as a group, as a class, and they used to choose people to read, like, oh, you're gonna read this section, you're gonna read that section, and the teacher just distributed like paragraphs, different sentences for each person, each student to read. And I used to get very anxious when my turn came because I didn't know the language very well. I was very slow at reading, and I used to get some of the words mixed up, or some of the words pronunciation wasn't correct. I used to sound it out, and I don't know why, but kids, they're like, "Oh, you still sound out words," that kind of thing. So they used to make fun of me. They used to bully me because I wasn't able to speak the language well enough. I wasn't able to read well enough. Um, but yeah, and every time I remember when before my turn came, I used to read, like I wasn't even paying attention to what was going on in the class. I was reading my part that the teacher gave to me all in my head. Try to make sure that I got everything. Well, I at least tried to get everything correct. Not perfect because I knew I wasn't perfect, but I was trying my best to make sure I pronounced every word properly. And when my turn came, I was so nervous. And now reflecting on that, that still happens to me today. And it happened to me a couple days ago when I was in a meeting at work. And they were basically asking everyone to read a part from the slides. And for some reason, I started getting nervous. And I told myself, why am I getting nervous? Like, my English has improved. But then I reflected back. I was feeling the same way I felt when I was a child. And now that I'm in this class, my head just clicked like, oh, that's a part of my childhood trauma. Like that's something that I went through and now it's affecting me when I'm an adult. So I think that was a bit of like a mind blowing moment for me because I realized that our childhood traumas can be way more important than we actually think. And like I said, I totally forgot about it. I totally forgot that I was made fun of. But then when I reflected it, my brain clicked and I realized, oh, I'm getting nervous. I'm getting anxious because of that interaction, because of that experience that I had as a child. So honestly, that's why I think reflecting on our childhood traumas is very important because that's how we understand ourselves, how we are able to understand children and why they might act the way that they act, why we are treating children the way we are treating them, and how we can better ourselves as people and as educators as well, because we have a big influence on children. So I really do encourage all of you to reflect on your own childhood traumas. So now moving on to children have the lack of control. So children cannot control the experiences that they have. They depend on us for most of their experiences. So this is why I think we should be more understanding if they are ever having like a hard day or are just not feeling it. It might be because of us and we might not realize it because we also set the environment, we set the mood inside the classroom. So yeah, we need to be more understanding of the effects that we as educators have on children because if we like it or not, it can affect them throughout their whole life. An example that I have from a personal note is that I had no control immigrating to Canada. In this case, this was a positive effect on me because now I'm in a country where there is more opportunities. But yeah, that's just something that as a child I had no control over. Okay, and now to discipline as young children. Imagine this. If we were all in the same room and we were asked what kind of punishments we had as children, what do you think the answer would be similar? What do you think the answer would be? And by reading this chapter, we see that most of the time the answers are pretty similar. If we choose to or not, our parents' influence on the way that we start parenting other children or our own children. Parent style Parenting style gets passed on from generation to generation, shows the impact that childhood trauma has on us. So if we see that from generation to generation, parenting style is passed down, that means that even just a little, there was a big or small impact on your life because your parents are your example, right? So they are an example. So that means that we should set an example to children. And this also helps us realize that discipline sometimes makes us who we are and has that big or small impact on who we are. So we can rather choose to be different from the way our parents parented us if we don't like it or if we believe that that's not the right way, or we can just continue with that parenting style. So validating, sorry, excuse me, validating our feelings. In order to validate our feelings, it is important to first accept our childhood trauma. And I know this can be very difficult for many people, but we have to keep in mind that it's not a morning to night process. This process will take time in order for you to accept your childhood traumas. So don't feel discouraged if you can't face or validate your feelings about your childhood trauma right away, because it is a process. And this will help us understand children better and how they act the way they act, and as well as it is our responsibility to understand children, because we are the educators. We're supposed to be the experts, right? So in order to do that, it's important to validate our feelings first. Acknowledging the way that we were disciplined was not the right way might make us feel more disloyal to our families, although it is an essential part of self-reflection. So at the same time, you don't want to acknowledge that maybe I was abused as a child, because you feel like you don't want to look at your parents in a negative way, right? But like I said, it takes time to validate your own feelings and to put yourself first. But over the years, it can be accomplished. All right, so now moving on to taking action. So here are some of the things that we can do in order to help us validate our feelings, in order to reflect on our childhood trauma, which is writing about it. We can write about our feelings of something that has happened to us in the past when we were children, interview others, talk to others about how we feel or how they cope with their feelings. Also, drawing about it. If you're not a big fan of what's it called, writing, and you're more artistic and visual like me, that could be an option for you. Or you can also get therapy. Some people are not as fortunate enough to have therapy, because that's seen a bit more as a luxury, I would say. So if you're fortunate enough and that's an option, that's a great option. And there's also reading and studying about why you feel this way, and ways that you can cope with your own feelings.